From music, we are now going to move on to esports, and this is the esports explosion, reaching and engaging with live gaming audiences. Here to tell us more, please welcome to the stage Luke Morgan, Nina Mackie, and Sam Matthews.
We go in the middle?
No, go on.
Oh. Hello.
Hello, everyone. Is this on? Yes.
Yes.
So yes, obviously it's given the title away already. But thank you very much for joining us. Obviously, for many of you in the room, you might not be massively familiar with esports from a branding point of view. So this panel, we are going to talk to two industry experts and kind of explain why brands are investing so heavily in esports right now. So please let me introduce both Sam Matthews and Luke Organ. If you can just give a little background on the companies that you work for and what it is you do, that'd be great.
Yeah, sure. So Luke Organ, SVP Global Partnerships at IMG. IMG, as some of you may be familiar with, is the leading global sports marketing agency powering the world's passion for sport. We work with a number of global rights holders, from the Wimbledons to the NFLs, and now with Fnatic and others within esports. A really exciting time for us to start exploring esports, as it's moved on from being a relatively nascent playing field into now one that has a real equity for us as marketeers to consider within the marketing landscapes.
Awesome. CEO and founder of Fnatic. We're like one of the biggest teams in the world. Over 1 billion people play competitive games. So I know it's an esports panel, but it's really about reaching 1/8 of the world who play these competitive games. As a team, we're kind of like a mix between Real Madrid and a media platform, in a sense that we have sports rights. We're operating in over 10 games globally, so we're not geo-targeted, although we are headquartered in London, which is rare in gaming and esports. And for us, this is all about how we help brands like Sony, Amazon, Red Bull activate across content creators and the biggest stages in the world.
Amazing, thank you. And I think key point that you mentioned there about the gaming industry. I think you've probably all been bored to death with the stat there's 3.4 billion gamers. We know there are, but I was quite surprised to learn that there's over 1 billion of those are competitive, and that means spending about 16 hours a day gaming as opposed to 7 hours a week. That's a lot. Yeah. That's a lot. That's a full-time job. So I think, and we'll get into a little bit more about the opportunity here for brands, but that's a huge percentage of all of the gamers. There's a lot of time spent in there. So let's kind of talk a little bit about that opportunity and what that means. I think something that you touched on, I'll pick on you first. So when you're thinking about esports in relation to mainstream sports, IMG, obviously you mentioned that you work with sports, many sports, and esports are included in that. How would you define for everybody the difference between esports and mainstream sports? So if I'm a brand, What do I need to know?
Yeah, look, I think mainstream sports has obviously played a major role in the way that brands can activate within the sporting landscape. What's unique about esports is its ability to bring together a disparate set of rights within the marketing platform and really truly become its own marketing channel. So when you start looking at the ability to bring in when content and influencers into programs, when you start looking at the media, the programmatic, and the wider reach within a user audience, then down to the creative solutions that can be built. I mean, if you go into some of the esports environments and you go into Sam's environment, these guys are prototyping technologies behind the scenes and looking at how they can test and deploy solutions that have direct correlation to some of the brand's ultimate end products and solutions that they're putting in marketplace. There's very, very few sports platforms that can bring all of those considerations together and really help brands tell a story to an avid audience that you can engage with on a one-to-one basis and a purity, right? This is the point. When you go into a sports stadium, you look at just the sheer breadth and depth of eyeballs that will be present in that stadium. How many of those are actually relevant to you? And I think this is where that really targeted, pure audience that you get within esports becomes really quite attractive to marketers looking at the next horizons and where they can find new audiences to play with and communicate to.
I think, I mean, the way to think about it is like, this is the ad block generation, right? They're not paid media doesn't really reach them. They're watching Twitch, YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, YouTube Shorts. And so what we offer as when I say media platform, it's unlike traditional sports, you might be just buying your rights and then you have to activate and do everything. We actually do everything for the brands we work with. So they will buy rights, but then on top of that, we'll scout creators in markets they care about. We'll go and make content that engages with the audience. We'll run their social media channels. We'll advance their products, whether it's Sony launching new gaming products. So it's a lot more about, I guess, hustle, because we have to help these people who generally don't understand the gaming audience to actually speak that language.
So you're project managing, right, from start to finish, essentially. I mean, that's a good point. So for some brands, you've hit the nail on the head. They'll come to you and say, like, we really don't know how to talk to esports fans. We don't know where we should start with creative. Like, what are some things that you would say in your experience of working with brands all the way through from, start to end, that they should be considering before they even come to talk to you? What should they be thinking?
Well, I think the first thing to understand is, as I said, ad block generation. So that means they're tech savvy, they're affluent, more affluent than non-gamers, they're more educated than non-gamers, and they tend to be the decision maker when it comes to tech, or automotive, or even potentially like switching energy providers. And so you got to really think about, like, these people are often the ones who are in their household choosing things where they're going to spend money in the future. And so when we're going out there and talking to brands like Red Bull, they obviously got that super early, and they understand that you're speaking authentically, providing value to them, and actually creating engaging content, engaging activations is the way to get this audience to actually relate.
But if I can jump in there a second, I think what's interesting though is that knowing that audience, the ability you have to guide brands so that you're not just you are showing up in the environment and being part of the community. One of the biggest challenges we have with brand marketing programs is this isn't just slap and dash. And if you just turn up with I'm going to deploy some media solutions, you're not going to ingratiate yourself in the gaming community. And that's where then what makes you quite unique and what we see as being unique in esports is how you bring that entire theory together and bring that to life.
Yeah, I mean, I think Red Bull, just to go back to that example, right? It's like, if you were to just pay for ads, like maybe Coca-Cola does or someone like that, you're going to have to keep paying for ads, and they're going to keep getting blocked, and you've got cost per acquisition. Whereas Red Bull comes in and they're like, actually, we're going to work with you as a team or a brand to create content that's authentic to our audience. Just go. Or we're going to create a new event like Red Bull Homegrounds, and we're going to own that conversation for that period of time. And I think that's where brands need to think differently, I guess.
So not just the digital play, but obviously, live sponsorships, all of the content around that. And I think you mentioned, both of you, the influencers as well. It's super important. We saw this on the previous panel from Loud Parade, and I think quite often, certainly when I work with brands and we get RFPs, and they just forget about that piece sometimes, and especially in things like esports, where it's such a strong community, right? So it's thinking about, okay, like you said, you can do digital ads, but where's the longevity? Where's the community? Where's the long-term build? I mean, have you got other examples? That
I think the first thing to understand is there's like so many games, right? So each audience you have to nuance your messaging to that gaming demographic often, but that provides opportunity because suddenly you've got games which are big in regions. So you can target, for us as Fnatic, we're agnostic of region, right? So we can be in Brazil, we're really big in Japan. I know that's ironic, but we have like teams in specific regions, and we have creators, and creators, they're not in traditional sport, right? Yeah, you've got some TikTok people who are making football trick shots or something like that. But in esports, they're like a fundamental part. So if you want to go out and like speak to the Italian audience, well, you work with Moonride. If you want to speak to the German audience, you speak with the Baus. And knowing who to talk to and what content to make with them is how you can actually sort of target your messaging in those markets.
And that becomes interesting for us because I think there's actually very few truly global audience platforms that we can utilize for and on behalf of brands to then activate locally in region and take into account the cultural norms, the nuances that exist in society, the trends that exist in society. And that's where with this fan base, with this audience, become bang on naturally and authentically in each of those regions, and it becomes then very powerful as a one-stop shop to deploy effectiveness of ad dollar, a marketing dollar in regional territories.
And I just want to we've got 5 minutes.
I might-
Speaking of bullet points, let's go. But gaming is such a huge part of culture, right? It's like youth culture today. Gen Alpha, Gen Z, they're all like massive gamers. They watch content, they buy digital skins. And so, you've got all your famous musicians, like, thanks for that, music before this. You've got sports stars, they're all massive gamers. So it's actually like, you can even tap into like the fact that, Superman, he's like building his own gaming computer. And it's like, there's so many elements of gaming culture that's pervasive, basically, across youth culture today.
I think as well, like to your point, I think both of you have mentioned this in terms of it being regional and it being localized, and understanding who can amplify that brand within the market. One question I'm sure that people are thinking is like, do you have to be global? And also, what's the entry level like in terms of investment, right? So, does somebody have to be a global brand? Obviously, no, they don't. But in terms of that, how do you get started? And because one of the things that makes digital so accessible is because you can start with any budget, right? So £1,000 or £2,000 or whatever you've got, basically. So if you're a small business, what's your kind of examples for?
Yeah, so obviously there's the whole scale, but the thing is, because we act as kind of a media platform and an agency, is that we do campaigns, for example, with Amazon Gaming Week, where we'll bring creators together around their tech week or gaming week. We do stuff with different, Spotify. We created a Fortnite map for them when they launched their Spotify Wrapped at the end of the year. So there's a lot of sort of, I guess, test and learn, but also, you don't have to go in with a full 3-year sponsorship deal. You can actually just try out this audience. But I think the key thing is to actually come in with I'm not just going to do a campaign to get ROI in the first. You have to be relevant. And you have to do something that provides value. And I think
not plug and play, right? You can't just...
Yeah, you were speaking about the value piece a lot, right?
Well, the audiences, they're too smart, they're too savvy, and they see it a mile off. And you talk about ad blockers, and it won't take much research to understand where brands have tried to do that. They're shunned or cold-shouldered in this marketplace. So then it does become an exchange, and you have to provide a value add, or you have to be part and active voice. So I think to your point about can you go local? Yes, you can. And it's then a case of who do you select within the esports landscape to understand where teams are based, where tournaments are taking place, the different genres of tournaments, and how there's then the slight tweaks on who those tournaments and what those game titles, who they're going to be talking to, and how you utilize that to best effect before you get into the big global all-encompassing campaigns that are so obviously there within esports. But again, the key point is it's efficiency of spend, as opposed you don't get the full spectrum of range of eyeballs that you would potentially see elsewhere.
In terms of value, what we're talking about is provide them engaging content, activate it with a creator in a way that they couldn't have done before, or work on creating community events, offshoots of these big, 50,000 person stadium and esports events by throwing a bar. It's about creating those moments which you can talk about, which isn't just here's our product, go and buy it,
Yeah, something that resonates, right?
Yeah.
And people can, because it's their own marketing, right, within communities. So if you get something that really hits the nail on the head, people are going to just do your marketing to a degree for you, right?
Exactly.
I'm conscious of time because we've only got about a minute or so left, but I want to make sure that I throw this out there because I know you both really understand the industry, and everybody's conscious of how Gen AI is affecting digital live engagement, sports, entertainment, fans. I just want to hear from both of you what your kind of predictions are on trends that you think, have a think what you think might be coming as a result, or what should we be looking out for?
Yeah, I think the first thing is that AI is not going to affect human-to-human entertainment, right? So we're going to see a rise in UGC, like TikTok, creators, esports and sports, I think, are going to thrive from the future, whatever that future looks like, whether we're all going to be getting paid by the government or actually. So I think it's only enhancing the entertainment aspect. I think there's obviously a lot of world with, recently the Olympics have just announced, Esports Olympics. So the IOC came in and unanimously voted for the 4th Olympics, which is coming in 2 years. So there's going to be more national stuff coming into play. So can you play in the grassroots? Can you help elevate the UK scene or the French scene? And of course, eventually VR, which has, been 5 years out for the last 50 years or whatever. But,
yeah, look, at IMG, we summarize it by sport has, and by this instance, gaming has the power like no other platform to participate and play its part in the attention economy. And that's the key here. And when you start looking, if you go to the next picture on the slide here, if you haven't been to an event, encourage you to really come down and get a grasp of the scale and execution now of what's happening within the world of esports. Is phenomenal.
Amazing. Thank you both. We're out of time, I'm afraid. But Luke, Sam, thank you very much.
no worries.
Thank you.
Have photos.